preparing for when we return to normality and prepare some risk plans such as operational risk, cyber risk, disaster risk. Probably this is something we never really considered before.
No, you are correct, in fact, Leah, that although companies and corporations do carry out a lot of risks assessments, never have we really thought about a pandemic. And this is something which is completely new to us. When you consider that the last time that there was a sort of pandemic which had nothing to do with the extent of this coronavirus, was the swine flu way back in 2009. In truth, most of us, and I would say all major corporations, have been caught unawares, and therefore there were no risk assessments available, and we have never really anticipated that. We've created risk assessments on crisis management. We've created a risk assessment of what we do if a disaster comes along. But usually a disaster, I don't know, an earthquake, a hurricane, is usually something which is geographically located and which does not take as long as this coronavirus seems to be taking. So yes, you are correct in stating that corporations need to start also thinking about the risks that they are going to start facing, and therefore carrying out these risk assessments as to how they are going to cope after COVID or COVID-19 is over. They have to cope with their employees coming back. They have to cope with the fact that some employees would have lost their job. They have to cope with the fact that some employees have not been carrying out their normal day-to-day routine for quite some time. They have to cope with the financial aspect of it. They have to cope with the liquidity aspect of it also. And therefore, yes, these are all considerations which we need to start thinking about, and which corporations, companies, corporate entities, and everyone really, I would say, not only just these entities, have to start seriously considering and preparing for.
In your opinion, should every business be going through this process of planning and putting together risk plans, whether they're large corporates or small businesses?
Yes. I think that everybody has to think in this way, because in some way or another, all of us have been affected by the implications that this COVID-19 has brought upon us. Of course, the bigger the entity, the more the preparation. The smaller the entity, the less preparation is required. But yes, the answer to your question would be a definite yes.
And what about sole traders and small retail outlets? I would imagine that many of them have never considered putting these sort of plans together.
I would put everyone, in fact, in the same category. Be they sole traders, be they corporations who are larger. Obviously, everything is relative in the sense that a sole trader and smaller retail outlets need to prepare less. But since all of us have been affected, all of us in some way or another have had the liquidity of our companies, of our businesses affected. All of us have had, whether we are sole traders or whether we are enormous corporations, have an employee or two who also in some way or another was either working remotely, was either not following the usual routine, or in truth, in some cases, even working more than usual. For example, if you see the supermarkets who have had an enormous amount of decrease insofar as deliveries are concerned, even these have to start planning. I am aware of supermarkets, for example, that have increased their personnel to cope with the deliveries. What happens when this is all over and people will be in a position to go back to the supermarket, and therefore deliveries won't be so important? What is going to happen to that personnel?
Absolutely, and in the same way with the restaurant deliveries, that's some restaurants tell me they can't even cope with the volume that they're managing at the moment. What would be the first step of a corporate who has, let's say, absolutely no risk assessments? Where do they start from?
Well, I think they should start by sitting down, evaluating how this has affected them. It's a process which is easy to do because you know your own business, you know your own corporation. So you know how it has affected your employees, how it has affected your cash flow, how it has affected your relationship with third parties, how it has affected your branding, how it has affected your consumers. And you do this exercise by seeing what the effects were.
Yes.
Once you have understood what the effects have been, you have to start going through a thought process as to how you are going to start acting, or rather reacting, once this is all over.
Yes, and I have also come across quite large groups of retail outlets, retail groups, who have no backup to actually carry on their business over the internet and make sales and deliveries over the internet. So I would imagine also, because we're finding this virtual communication quite convenient also, it might be something that perhaps they should really consider now.
Definitely. In fact, just as the restaurants have invested in deliveries, so also I would say that retail outlets have to start seriously considering online shopping. They used to Maltese retail outlets used to complain about foreign online shopping and how it ate at their market. Now is the time for them to react to this and to be on ball and to also get into the online business. And I'm sure that it will be something that if they start doing it now, in truth, they can keep it up even after.
Thank you very much, Dr. Giglio. Once again, thank you very much. That was, thank you very much. Thank you very much for joining us today. That was Dr. Joe Giglio, top criminal lawyer, with some ideas about starting to plan for risks for businesses, for corporates. Thank you very much for joining me. I'll be with you tomorrow evening at 5:45. Good evening.